Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
(2026). Happy St. Patrick's Day. Man, it's like I say this every time we do this show together, but there's just so much happening and so much that's developed in the past like couple hours. Um, Hard to keep track of everything. It's you create a program, a show plan, and then you're like, oh well, now I need to go talk about all this other stuff and just trying to grab it all. But anyway, welcome to the show. President Trump was just doing a bilateral meeting with the Irish Prime Minister. I was just watching that. There's definitely some clips. You know, he uses those opportunities in those meetings to like say stuff that's important. And so grabbing all of that and making sure that we talk about it, he's like using it as disclosure. But to that point, by the way, how's the chat? What's up, everybody? Do I need to do a mic check? People in the chat are saying a mic check. It says I'm on the right microphone, so I think we're good. And it looks like I'm getting good receiving, so I think we're good. Let me know if the mic's not coming through clean. We will throw y'all up on the screen. Looks like it's only YouTube on there. I don't know why Rumble's not showing up too. Anyway, to that point, let's go ahead and play one of those clips. I want to play longer segments, but this is just one that I saw and is relevant to the conversation that CanCon and I were having this morning on Badlands Daily and relevant to what I was writing about in the news brief on Monday. I think it was, on the Monday edition. And so here is a clip of Trump being asked. I think he's being asked about NATO. Listen to what he says.
Are you rethinking the United States' relationship with NATO possibly getting out?
Well, I'm disappointed in NATO that we spend trillions of dollars on NATO. Think of it, trillions over the years, many trillions of dollars. It's one of the reasons we have deficits and we help other countries. And when they don't help us, I mean, it's certainly something that we should think about. I don't need Congress for that decision. As you probably know, I can make that decision myself. I'd work with some very smart people. And I'd always deal with Congress anyway, but I don't need Congress for that decision. But, you know, when you say rethink, I have nothing currently in mind, but I will say that I'm not exactly thrilled when we help them with Ukraine. Look, Ukraine would have been over in one day if we didn't help. Frankly, Ukraine would have been over in the first day. They had the best equipment in the world. It was our equipment given by Sleepy Joe Biden. No charge. Hundreds of billions of dollars of the best equipment in the world. No charge. I will say that I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, so there you go. Might pull the U.S. out of NATO because the partners, England or Britain, France, refused to send ships to the Strait of Hormuz to help clear it against Iran. And that kind of That's a major signal, by the way. That's a major signal in addition to some of the other stuff he said that we'll look at, that this Iran thing is all an op. Again, doesn't mean that there isn't kinetic action happening. What I think it means is that it's being leveraged for other purposes aside from what we're being told it's being leveraged for, primarily to dismantle NATO and probably the EU. The EU sounds like is coming apart at the seams. We're going to look at that. We got into that a little bit on Badlands Daily. If the U.S. pulls out of NATO, NATO's done. There is no NATO without the U.S. That is the president is the commander in chief of NATO. That's how it's always worked. Yeah, there's a secretary general, but he answers to the president. The president decides what happens with NATO. So if we pull out, NATO has no funding. NATO collapses. And by the way, there doesn't need to be a NATO. NATO is a worthless organization. It's a waste of money. Big waste of money. So let's talk about some of the things that are happening. And my computer is already telling me how angry it is that I have too many tabs open. But let's talk about some of the things that I think are driving this. And one of them is really it's the God, it's so funny. Burning Bright sent me this. Tyler Durden published a article from Zero Hedge, published an article today about the Middle East, and he entitled it "The Kobayashi Maru Scenario." I wonder where he got the inspiration for that title. For those who aren't familiar, that's literally what Burning Bright has been referring to the Middle East as for like the past 3 years. But anyway, that's all right. That's all right. I don't blame him. BB's a smart guy. So this article, a transcript of a interview between Kevin Hassett with Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation. This is from Sunday. And he is the director of the National Economic Council under Trump. And so he goes into obviously it's a long conversation. We're not going to sit here and read through the whole thing. But she starts off by saying here's the first question. She says, "We now go to President Trump's top economic advisor, Kevin Hassett. Good morning to you." She says the IDF spokesperson said this morning that Israel's combat operations will go through the beginning of April. Is that also the U.S. timeline? And if so, how much will this conflict cost the economy if it goes on another 3.5 weeks? And Hassett says, right, well, one of the things that we've been briefed on almost every day is what's going on and what the president is being briefed on with regard to the Iran war. And as of yesterday, the message was that the Defense Department of War believed that it would take 4 to 6 weeks to complete this mission and that we're ahead of schedule. So we're a couple of weeks in, and I think that should give you some clarity about when we expect that the president will decide that we've achieved his objectives. The other thing I can say is that you can also look at futures markets, which are interesting because you've cited over and over the spot price of gasoline, which of course is affected right now by the disruption of the Strait. But you look at the futures price, they are expecting a rapid end of a situation and much, much lower prices. In fact, I don't think I've seen a sort of future price path with such a steep decline in all my years watching futures. And I think he's referring to the price of oil per barrel, and it's just going up and down, right? I think we went over that the other day on Friday. And so then she says, we'll talk about oil later in the program as those markets prepare to open later today. But the International Energy Agency called this the largest supply distribution or disruption in the history of the global oil market. So I'm not sure how much past charts are a future indicator here. But the president is calling on other countries now to send ships to help protect the Strait of Hormuz. You just heard Iran's foreign minister say Tehran has been approached by other countries about negotiating their way through the strait. If that kind of negotiation happens, are Americans just going to get cut out here? And then Hassett says, well, first of all, you have to understand that America is not going to have its economy harmed by what the Iranians are doing. The bottom line is that in the 70s, we didn't produce much oil. This is the key quote that I think I put, if I'm not mistaken, I put this quote in the news brief on Monday. Yeah, this is the one that I put in the news brief on Monday. I was just double checking that. So he says the bottom line is that in the 70s, we didn't produce much oil, but now we do. So America is in a very strong position. They think that they're going to harm the U.S. economy and get President Trump to back down. There couldn't be anything that was a stupider thing to say, because the bottom line is that our economy has got all of this momentum in the world, and we've got lots and lots of oil. We have lots of trading partners that are more on the hook from imported oil than from these guys. And that's the key line right there. He says, we have lots of trading partners that are more on the hook from imported oil from these guys, referring to Iran. And as we can see, it's completely unacceptable that a government that would, murder 40,000 of their people just a few months ago would be blackmailing countries to let stuff through. President Trump thinks that this is unacceptable, and for the global economy, we need to fix it, and we are going to fix it fast. And she says, okay, it is a global market, but I take your point. There's a supply. There's supply, of course. There's refining. There's other interruptions in the ability to access oil and gas, but gas prices themselves are up more than 20% since this conflict began. Jet fuel prices are leading airlines to raise ticket prices quickly. That's not my opinion. That's the United Airlines CEO who just said that. The American Farm Bureau warned of supply chain shocks when we already have record high input prices. So can you give us some kind of projection here on how this will impact consumer prices and for how long? For sure, he says. And I want you to know that this is something that the government has been studying for decades. And even myself, when I first came in as chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, one of the first assignments I got from General Mattis was to study this is the first administration, was to study what happens if there are oil disruptions. And so we know how to minimize the impact of this disruption. Now, you can't make it completely go away, but you can minimize it. And so we are increasing the amount of permits that we are giving to Venezuela. We're getting new sources of fertilizer from Morocco and from Venezuela and other places to make sure that our farmers have the fertilizer they need. And we're even thinking ahead about the jet fuel problem, which is mostly a problem for jet fuel coming from Asia. And we have been in discussions to make it easier for foreign ships to go from the Gulf of America over to the West Coast to make sure that we don't have a disruption from jet fuel as well. And so we are looking at every scenario, and we've got a plan for each scenario. And I think that's about the extent of what. Yeah. So then they talk about the price of oil, and he says that, he's thinking that the price of oil is going to drop down towards 60 and maybe even below 50. So anyway, that is the key element here is that, well, actually, I want him to play this clip right here. I think this is a good clip because now he's talking about how the U.S. economy is not really going to be affected by the oil disruptions, but other economies are. Let's listen to that.
The latest number I was briefed on was 12, and so it's consistent.
Let's see. I don't think this is from the beginning, but if it is, I'll skip through the parts that
we go now to President Trump's top economic advisor
to let stuff through. President Trump thinks that is unacceptable, and for the global economy, we need to fix it, and we're going to fix it fast.
Okay. I mean, it is a global market, but I take your point. There is supply. Of course, there's refining. There's other interruptions to the ability to access oil and gas. But gas prices themselves are up more than 20% since this conflict has begun. Jet fuel prices are leading airlines to raise ticket prices quickly. That's not my opinion. That's the United Airlines CEO who just said that. The American Farm Bureau warned of supply chain shocks when we already have record high input prices. So can you give us some kind of projection here on how this will impact consumer prices and for how long?
For sure. And I want you to know that this is something that the government has been studying for decades. And even myself, when I first came in as chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, one of the first assignments I got from General Mattis was to study what happens if there are oil disruptions. Mm-hmm. And so we know how to minimize the impact of this disruption. Now, you can't make it completely go away, but you can minimize it. And so we're increasing the amount of permits that we
Okay, there's something going on with, I just want to make sure there's something going on with Rumble. Let me make sure that we are live. I don't know what's going on here. Do we have two links up? This is strange. Stand by for processing. I want to make sure that we have just got a missed call. Hold on 1 second. There is a issue going on here with Rumble. Shit. I don't know why this is not. Stream details can only be edited on Rumble. Yeah, I'm gonna put the X link in here. I don't know why this is not live, guys. I'm not the one who set up the stream, so I'm not sure why the stream isn't going to the right spot. But yeah, I'm looking at the Rumble page. I don't see it. Wait, John put a link in the chat, and this link appears to be working. Okay, so I guess we are live. Sorry about that, guys. We are live, but for some reason the link is not on the Badlands Rumble page. So I'm sure we'll get that figured out. All right. Well, we're just gonna continue. We're gonna plow forward
to Venezuela. We're getting new sources of fertilizer from Morocco and from Venezuela and other places to make sure that our farmers have the fertilizer they need. Mm-hmm. And we're even thinking ahead about the jet fuel problem, which is really mostly a problem for jet fuel coming from Asia. And we've been in discussions to make it easier for foreign ships to go from the Gulf of America over to the West Coast to make sure that we don't have a disruption from jet fuel as well. And so we are looking at every scenario, and we've got a plan for each scenario.
Okay, are you going to trigger those things and make them operational, or are you just looking at them? And how do you prevent food prices from also going up?
Right. Well, the big problem right now would be energy prices, and we're watching and monitoring closely. We're looking at things every day and seeing how quickly we progress. The bottom line is, again, that the reason why futures markets for oil are dropping down towards 60 and even below 50 in the long run is that we expect that if Iran stops being this disruptive terrorist or force in the Middle East, that there'll be a boom in oil production and industrial production. But think about the harm that this evil government has done to their own people. Yeah. Back in the 70s, but before the revolution, Iran was the 17th largest economy in the world. Now it's something like the 50th.
No one's going to defend the regime's human rights record on this program.
But the point is that I wanted to just say that the countries around them, they also suffer from the risk of having them go nuts and attack them. And so we expect that the global economy is going to have a big positive shock as soon as this is over. And we're still being briefed that it would be 4 to 6 weeks from the beginning and that we're ahead of schedule.
A big positive shock, 4 to 6 weeks. So this is a April 9th scenario you're talking about. You're going to see some kind of boost.
The president will decide. The president will decide if they no longer have the capability of blackmailing us and harming our neighbors. And once he decides that, then he'll call an end to the war.
That's a pretty broad definition.
Well, we've destroyed their Navy, we've destroyed their Air Force, and so on. And so I think we're well on the way.
Well, tell me, how much is this war going to cost? Because I know the Pentagon briefed it's going to be about $11.3 billion. Do you need to ask Congress for more money to pay for what you're doing?
I think right now we've got what we need. Whether we have to go back to Congress for more is something that I think that Rustvote and OMB will look into. But the latest number, you said 11.3, the latest number I was briefed on was 12. And so it's consistent. So this is something that we've got the weapons that we've already got in place to do this. And so we're not necessarily going to need any kind of supplemental.
More than that was spent just the first week of the war. You know that. It was over $5 billion just in munitions. Mm-hmm. You're solid on the 12?
12 billion
for 6 weeks of war?
No, I'm sorry. The 12 billion was what I was briefed has been spent so far.
Oh, gotcha. Kevin Hassett, thank you very much. We'll be right back with a lot more Face the Nation.
All right, we've got some breaking news. We want to take you to the
Sorry, guys, muted. Yeah, not a great start. Okay, but what I was saying is that we have how this situation is impacting Europe. Trump said yesterday that he never imagined that the Strait of Hormuz would be shut down. He said, "I've never imagined that they would have done that." That's actually not true. He said that like 15 years ago. He was being interviewed, I think, during Obama's first term, and said if you go to war with Iran, you're going to see the Strait of Hormuz be shut down. The Persian Gulf is going to be threatened, and it's going to create an energy crisis. I think he even said you might see $300 a barrel oil. So again, this is Trump running ops where he is lying. He is lying to the press, but he's not lying to his base. He's lying to, I think, his enemies, and that's who he's constantly communicating with when he says this stuff. He's constantly telling them things to confuse them, and then they latch on and they say Trump has no idea what he's talking about. Trump is so confused. But if you go back and you look at the history, Trump actually knows exactly what he's talking about. So let's watch this clip from Brian Kilmeade. Let's see. This is from right here. All right. So this is Trump on Friday speaking to Brian Kilmeade on Fox News. If I can get it to play. Yeah, so Kilmeade's even saying that Trump was talking about this in 88. He was talking about it in 2009. He was talking about it in 2013. He was talking about when he was running for president the first time in 2016. And again, he says, I can change my mind in seconds. So he says that to Kilmeade. Then right after like a few hours after he says this, he puts out a post. And again, as I talked about this morning, This is something that all pro-Iran, like pro-war with Iran people, like the neocons and the Zionists, have all been pushing this. Here's Yair Lapid on March 7th. Israel must destroy all of Iran's oil fields and energy industry on Karg Island. That is what will cripple Iran's economy and topple the regime. This war must end when the regime in Iran has fallen. The nuclear facilities have been destroyed. All the ballistic missile industry has been destroyed, and Hezbollah has been destroyed in Lebanon. And so right after Trump does this interview with Brian Kilmeade, by the way, goes on a different show on Fox and basically is saying Trump's going to attack Karg Island. So here's Brian Kilmeade from Friday, or from Thursday, rather. I think this is Thursday. So again, that was before he did the interview with Trump, and then Trump just totally like humiliated him and was like, "I thought you were smarter than that to ask a question like that, right?" He's just kind of humiliating the guy. Here's Ben Shapiro saying the same thing. This is I believe this is the day before. Yes, this is on Thursday. This is what Ben Shapiro put out the day before Trump does that interview with Brian Kilmeade. Okay. And so again, all these people are basically front running Trump, and they're trying to be like, this is what you should do. 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 You should go attack Karg Island, right? They're all pushing him towards that. You have, again, Israeli officials saying it. You have pundits on Fox News saying it. You have Ben Shapiro saying it. They're all pushing him towards that, right? And so here's Trump yesterday during his press conference where he said a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, we could almost just like play all these press conferences all the way through because he just says so much like kind of crazy stuff. But here's what he says about that.
Would be a weapon, which I predicted a long time ago, predicted all.
Okay. And I don't know if I was sharing the screen with the Ben Shapiro thing, but let's go back and play it again.
Well, first, there are a few things that we could do. The United States could seize control of Iran's oil facilities on Karg Island, that is cutting off the lifeline of the Iranian regime. So the Iranian government is reliant totally on oil exports to China, entirely. Karg Island is kind of the exhaust port in the Iranian Death Star. It's a place of unique vulnerability subject to very specific and meticulous action. Approximately 90 to 95% of Iran's crude oil exports pass through this tiny coral island 15 miles off the coast of Iran. The island features a massive tank farm with a storage capacity of somewhere between 28 and 30 million barrels of oil. So far, we've left that untouched. The reason we've left that untouched is because we're afraid that if we take action against Karg Island, then the price of crude is going to spike even more because that is where Iran is shipping oil out to China. But if the Iranians keep harassing all the oil traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, except for that Chinese oil traffic, since again, Iran and China are allies, then the United States may grow tired of this game and simply seize control. And the price of Brent crude would spike for a short time. And then there would be a long-term decline in the price of oil because the Iranian regime would basically be toast. They would basically lose its own endgame. The Americans would not be retreating and they would have no economic lifeline. Yes, they could up the ante even more in the Straits of Hormuz and close it temporarily, not for very long, because the Iranian government would have no money. They would have no resources flowing out. And the Americans would be sitting on their most precious resource, which is their capacity for oil export. The Iranian governmental failure might not be immediate, but it would become inevitable, not merely possible.
Yeah. Okay. And then this feeds into what Kilmeade said. So let me play the video of Kilmeade from Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday. And so this is Brian Kilmeade on Fox News before he interviewed President Trump.
Keep us.
Okay. And he's like kind of teasing, like, I'm going to go ask Trump this question.
But we don't want that kind of disruption for our own citizens. We want our families.
I would love to see him take Karg Island, that oil island. He'd be just like Venezuela. We control their oil. 90% of their oil goes to this little island. The president talked about it in a 1988 interview, and I think he should grab it.
Wouldn't that portend stability?
Keep us.
Okay. And then, of course, the next day, he has President Trump on his show, and this is Friday. So right after, like a day or two after he goes on and says that, and he's like, I really want Trump to attack Karg Island. Here's what he says. He's interviewing Trump.
Now here in 2026, you are president. Are you thinking about taking Karg Island, where 90% of the Iranian oil goes through? And what do you think about, do you remember that interview and that school of thought?
Yeah, but Brian, I can't answer a question like that. You shouldn't ask it. And you shouldn't be even asking it. It's one of so many different things. It's not high on the list, but it's one of so many different things. And I can change my mind in seconds. But, for you to ask a question, who would answer a question like that? I mean, you're asking me a question, Karg Island, okay, everything. Who would ask a question like that? And what fool would answer it, okay? Let's say I was going to do it, or let's say I wasn't going to do it. What would I tell you? Oh, yes, Brian, I'm thinking about doing it. Let me let you know what time and when it'll take place. It's not, it's sort of a foolish question. A little surprising for you because you're a smart man.
I am, but you were just pretty amazing that you thought about it in 1988. So now here.
Yeah. So I think Brian Kilmeade thought he was going to be like, get a little pat on the head. Like, oh, good for you for doing your homework, Brian. But Trump just totally bullies him for daring to ask for his military plans. And then this is what Trump said behind the Resolute desk. I believe this was yesterday.
Stupid.
To use even a limited ground force to secure whatever nuclear material remains in Iran is part of that threat.
No.
And secondly, have you made a decision?
You mean to go in and get it?
Yes, sir.
Why would I tell you a thing like that?
And secondly,
I can't stand reporters, sir, will you attack Karg Island? Will you occupy Karg? They ask me these questions. And I don't want to be mean, but they're stupid questions. If any president answered those questions, they shouldn't be president.
And secondly, sir,
Okay. So again, like, take what he just said and extrapolate it out to the entire Iran war. Because how many months has Trump been teasing he's going to go to war with Iran? And now he's saying anyone who would say, I'm going to go to war with, like, I'm going to do this thing militarily, shouldn't be president. By the way, exactly what he said in 2016 when he was running for president, where he said Obama's an idiot because he holds a press conference, tells you what his battle plans are, and then goes and does the battle plans. He's like, how stupid could you possibly be? Okay. Now, look at what he said. This is a different press conference yesterday. This is all from yesterday, where he says he's with Mike Johnson and Susie Wiles.
All of this stuff, you guys were very generous. I knew about the Strait, that it would be a weapon, which I predicted a long time ago. I predicted all of this stuff. You guys were very generous on that. I predicted all of it. I predicted Osama bin Laden would
knock out the World Trade Center. I made that prediction a year before he did it. I said, you better get him. He's a bad guy. I watched him be interviewed one time, and I said, that's a bad guy. You better get him. 1 year before, exactly. I wrote it in a book. You can even check about a year before the World Trade Center then came down. President Clinton actually had a shot at him, and he didn't take it. Unfortunately, I'm not blaming him for that, but he didn't take it. And he ended up knocking down the World Trade Center, but I predicted that too. I predicted a lot of things. We strongly encouraged, like I knew about.
Yeah. And so going back to Friday, so like he humiliates Brian Kilmeade, right? Humiliates him. He kind of continues to humiliate him yesterday during that other press conference, but he puts this out Friday night. He says, moments ago at my direction, the United States Central Command executed one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East and totally obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Karg Island. Our weapons are the most powerful and sophisticated that the world has ever known, but for reasons of decency, I have chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision. Okay, so he says, yeah, we just blew up Karg Island, which is what all of these shills were telling him to do. You had Yair Lapid from Israel saying you need to do this. That was March 7th. You had Ben Shapiro, you had Brian Kilmeade, you had all of them. They were all pushing him to do it. And so then he's like, all right, I did it, but I didn't do everything you wanted me to do because I didn't blow up the oil. They were all saying if you blow up the oil, then you destroy their economy. I don't think Trump wants to destroy their economy, by the way. I don't think that's in the long-term interest because it would take years or decades to rebuild it. And Trump has already said, I want the oil. Like we want access to the oil. So then that brings us to this clip. Where is it? This one. And so where is it? Yeah, so this is on Macron. So Macron said, because Trump called on all of the European leaders. You heard Hassett say it in that the first video we played. He called on over the weekend. I need everyone to join in, like international effort. We need an international effort to secure the Strait of Hormuz, right? And while he's saying that, he's also saying, where is it? I think it's this one right here. That ship captains need to show some guts and go ahead and just cross the strait. Like we got your back. Go ahead and just do it. Like, what are you waiting for? Again, like very, very strange rhetoric. Let me see if I have that one. I want to make sure I pull up the right. Yeah. So here's Trump saying yesterday that he didn't blow up the oil. He was very generous. He didn't blow up the pipes. I blew up everything but the pipes. Come on now. Here we go.
And as you know, we attacked Karg Island and knocked it literally, destroyed everything on the island except for the area where the oil is. I call it the pipes. We left the pipes. We didn't want to do that, but we will do that. We can do that on 5 minutes notice. It'll be over. But for purposes of someday rebuilding that country, I guess we did the right thing. But it may not stay that way. Just one simple word and the pipes will be gone too, but it'll take a long time to rebuild that.
Okay. And then we previously discussed how he said, we're going to offer insurance. We're going to insure boats, ships that go through the Hormuz because the insurance company said they didn't want to do it. And then here's Trump. Again, this is like the days leading up to the purported Karg Island attack. And here's him telling ship captains to have some guts and just go ahead and cross the Hormuz.
Here's exactly what he said. These ships should go through the Strait of Hormuz and show some guts. There's nothing to be afraid of. They have no navy. We sunk all their ships. He went on to say, he said, look, yeah, there's risk in the region. The region's volatile. They are loyal. Here's
Yeah. And then finally, we can land it with him saying that with Macron. Being asked about Macron today in the meeting with the Israeli or the Irish Prime Minister.
President Macron has just said in the last hour that he will never join a task force in the Strait of Hormuz until hostilities finish. Yet yesterday you said...
Who said that? Who said?
President Macron of France. What's your reaction to that, sir?
Well, he'll be out of office very soon, so we'll have to see. I don't know.
Mr. President.
Okay. So again, the pincer move that Trump has run, obviously Trump is telling stories here. There's a narrative happening here. Again, what's actually been blown up, what actually hasn't, we can't possibly verify that here on the show. But it's very clear that Trump is being very bombastic. He's being very, very provocative. He's mocking reporters for asking him questions. There's just chaos, right? These people are saying, you need to do this thing, you need to do this thing. And he's like, why would I ever tell you that I'm actually going to do the thing? And then a few hours later, it's like, we did the thing, but we didn't do it the way you actually wanted us to do it. So there's that. And then he says, okay, by the way, because we did this thing, we blew up the Karg Island, and they shut down the Strait of Hormuz. We now need ships. We need navies to show up and protect the strait. Oh, at the same time, ship captains, you need to show some balls and cross the strait. Like, what are you doing? What are you waiting for? But at the same time, we need all the navies of the world to show up. He's contradicting himself constantly. And the anti-Trump people, the people who have the Trump derangement syndrome, are looking at this as evidence that Trump has lost his mind and that he is like has no idea what he's doing. I look at this as signal that we shouldn't really take anything at face value. Like, nothing that he is putting out, we should take at face value, because I think he is baiting all these people into clamping down on whatever narrative they want to be the truth and reporting that. They want it to be the truth that Iran has been destroyed, that Iran's economy has been destroyed, that Iran is never going to be a threat again. And yet, is that actually going to be the outcome of all this? I don't know. But the pincer move that I think we're seeing is twofold. Number one, we're seeing as I said on Badlands Daily this morning, and I wrote about in the news brief, Europe is totally dependent on Russia and in the US, as well as the Persian Gulf, for their natural gas. So there's oil and there's natural gas. The natural gas comes down from Russia through Ukraine. That's where they get most of their natural gas from. They're supposed to. That all was disrupted during the Ukraine special military operation. Putin comes out right after the Iran war started and said, I don't think I'm going to sell oil. I don't think I'm going to sell natural gas to Europe anymore. Maybe I'll just cut them off entirely. Then the Strait of Hormuz purportedly gets shut down, right? Trump is demanding Britain and France to send ships because he's like, y'all are the one, as Hassett said on the earlier clip, y'all are the ones who are dependent on the Persian Gulf. We're not dependent on it. Like, we're fine. Like, we make our own natural gas, but y'all are dependent on the Persian Gulf. Why don't you send some ships up there? Britain and France are saying, no, we're good, because they don't want to piss off Iran. They don't want to get the ships blown up in their mind, but they also don't want to piss off Iran, because Iran, they're all trying to negotiate with Iran to get passage through the Strait of Hormuz. The last thing they want to do is have a standoff with Iran. And so Trump is now saying, okay, well, if you're not going to send ships, then we're just going to pull out of NATO. Like, we don't need NATO. Like, fine. At the same time, Europe is totally dependent on, again, Iran, Russia, and the US for natural gas. And that is forcing them into a pinch point where they, as Hassett said, they're facing a total energy crisis right now, an economic crisis. They're going to have to negotiate. And I think all three parties, Iran, Russia, and the US, are all going to demand as a baseline for any negotiation that they make peace with Russia. They stop the Ukraine war, and they establish they accept whatever terms Putin is offering, and they make permanent peace with Russia. That's absolutely, I think, going to be the outcome of all of this. But as we also discussed on Badlands Daily, there's a real threat, according to the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, who is a globalist and he's anti-populism. He says there's a real threat of Poland exiting the EU if his opposition gets into office, if the right gets into office, the populist right. So, you know, that is the signal right there that the cracks, the fissures in the EU are real, and that they are actually starting to impact the situation. And then finally, we get Trump right here. This is from the Times of Israel. He says, "We're not ready to leave Iran yet, but we will be in the very near future." So again, he's signaling that, you know, this war is probably wrapping up here pretty soon, while Israel is saying it's not going to wrap up anytime soon. They have no timeline. That's what they're saying. No timeline, and no 3 weeks at least is what they're saying. 3 weeks is what they said yesterday. Okay, so now we can talk about Israel, because Israel purportedly has taken out the leader of Iran. I mean, I would call him a leader of Iran because it's Ali Larijani. This guy, he is the one responsible for Iranian devolution. He's the one responsible for initiating the continuity of government situation back in August. And so as a result, that kind of puts him as the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council. He's kind of been the voice, like the mouthpiece, the voice of a lot of the stuff coming out of Iran. And he put out an interesting post the other day. He said, if I can pull it up. Slow. He said that the Epstein network was going to put up perform false flags in America and blame it on Iran. Here's his post from over the weekend. So he says that he understands the remaining members of the Epstein network have devised a conspiracy to create an incident similar to 9/11 and blame Iran for it. Iran, quote, Iran fundamentally opposes such terrorist schemes and has no war with the American people. So he makes it very clear, we're not here to fight the American people. We're not fighting the American people. We're not doing any of the things that they're trying to blame on us when they say that there are like Iranian terror cells in America. And again, you can think, okay, well, that's just wartime propaganda. But again, from a totally strategic standpoint, that doesn't make any sense, because what has been reported previously is that China and Russia are both advising Iran militarily, right? They're both advising Iran militarily, and they told Iran when Trump is blustering for months and months and months about attacking, what the hubbub is that China and Russia said, don't strike first because you will lose the moral high ground. If Trump's going to attack you, let Trump attack first, because if you attack first, then you're going to lose the moral high ground. The optics of it are going to be that you're the aggressor and the world won't sympathize with you. If you let Trump attack first, you will have the sympathy. So that was the logic that Iran has been operating from. And it makes perfect sense. That's good wisdom, right? If that's the case, then you extend that. Why would you then engage in terrorist operations? If Trump is sitting here saying, yeah, we're going to wrap this thing up soon. We're going to wrap it up soon. It's not like we're pretty much done in Iran, regardless of what actually has been accomplished and what actually has happened. Why would you then turn around and attack the U.S. homeland with terrorist operations, with false, not false flags, but from their perspective, but attack the American civilians? All you're going to do is gin up support among the American people to support a ground invasion of Iran, right? Which is what the neocons and the Zionists say they want. That would be the worst possible decision you can make. The strategic decision would be to not do that, because if you're watching online and you're looking online, most of the American people don't support this war. MAGA doesn't support it. Obviously, the anti-Trump people don't support it. I think people who support Trump believe in Trump, and they think he's doing the right thing, and they want to understand why the war is happening. But the idea of putting boots on the ground in Iran and like starting this whole thing over again that we did 25 years ago, nobody's interested in that. Nobody's really interested in that. So from Iran's perspective, the American people are already skeptical of the whole situation. Going to America and conducting terrorist attacks is only going to bring them against Iran and be like, okay, Trump, go ahead and do whatever you have to do. Bomb them, bomb everything, right? Okay, so here's Larijani's actual Twitter post. And he says he posted this in 9 different languages, And the first post he made was actually, I believe, in Russian, if I'm not mistaken. But it says, as I said, I've heard that the remnants of the Epstein team have devised a conspiracy to create an incident similar to 9/11, frame Iran for it. Iran is fundamentally opposed to such terrorist programs and has no war with the American people. And going back to the Israeli media, they're saying that they killed this guy. So Netanyahu Katz authorized IDF to take out senior Iranian Hezbollah figures without usual prior approval. This is what a report in Iran, in Israel, who knows if this is true or not, but it says, in a rare move, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz have recently instructed the military to immediately eliminate any senior Iranian or Hezbollah figure when intelligence allows, without waiting for traditional approval from military and political chains of command. Channel 12 reports. The directive aims to prevent delays in operational activity during the ongoing U.S.-Israeli bombing campaign in Iran and Israel's fighting with Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon, according to the Hebrew Network. The report follows last night's targeted assassinations against senior Iranian officials Ali Larijani and Gholam Reza Soleimani, on which the network reports additional details. The attack on Soleimani, the former head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Bazij force, targeted not only the commander, his deputy, and other Bazij commanders in Shiraz and additional cities, but also killed hundreds of Bazij operatives as well, according to the report. Israeli sources tell the network that in the coming days, Israel intends to continue targeting the Bazij, the paramilitary force known to brutally suppress domestic opposition to the Iranian regime, quote, to the point where the Iranian public understands that this is its moment to rise up. This is the thing we keep hearing. We keep hearing that any minute now, the Iranian people are going to rise up. None of it has happened. Quote, we are aiming for a certain point in time when we can call on the masses to take over the streets, a senior Israeli official tells Channel 12. Netanyahu has repeatedly vowed that the operation against Iran will create the conditions for the Iranian people to rise up and topple the regime. Okay, so we have it pretty well reported that Larijani is dead, right? Can we all agree that that's what is being reported? Well, then you have this. So here is from an hour ago. Larijani just gave a press conference. So they said that they killed him early this morning, like in the middle of the night, like early in the morning, they killed him in a raid. All right. And here he is holding a press conference.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. خیلی خرسندیم که امروز توفیق دیدار.
So, I mean, we're gonna have to see what comes of this, but here is Netanyahu claiming that Larijani is dead. This is from the official Prime Minister of Israel account.
הבוקר חיסלנו את עלי לריג'ני. עלי לריג'ני זה הבוס של משמרות המהפכה, שזה...
I'm just going to read it to you. It says, this morning we eliminated Ali Larijani. Ali Larijani is the boss of the Revolutionary Guards, that group of gangsters that effectively runs Iran. Alongside him, we also eliminated the commander of the Bazij. They are the gangsters' assistants who are terrorizing the population. In the streets of Tehran and other Iranian cities, we are operating there as well. Operating from the air with Air Force jets and UAVs. We are undermining this regime in the hope of giving the Iranian people an opportunity to remove it. It will not happen all at once, and it will not happen easily, but if we persist, we will give them the chance to take their destiny into their own hands. At the same time, we are helping our American friends in the Gulf. I spoke at length to President Trump on this matter yesterday. There is cooperation between our air forces and navies, between myself and President Trump and his staff. We will assist both through indirect attacks, which create immense pressure on the Iranian regime, and through direct actions. There are many, many more surprises. By stratagems, you shall make war. And by the way, that's interesting. He says that by stratagems, you shall make war. Mossad's original, they changed it a few years ago because I think they understood how like devious it sounded, but their original mantra was by deception, we shall wage war. That was what Mossad's original like mantra was. And so he just said by stratagem, we shall wage war. By stratagems, you shall make war. We will not reveal all the stratagems here, but as I told you, there are many. Now, regarding another matter, the most important thing for winning a war is determination. Determination, determination, determination. He just keeps repeating it. The determination of the leaders, the determination of the commanders, and the determination of the people. We are determined to win. We will achieve these goals. Now, this comes on the tail end of, I mean, I'm sure for those of you who have been paying attention, that Netanyahu is like been rumored to be dead for quite a long time, right? And we played one of the videos. There's multiple videos circulating of like that clearly are AI. One of them has Netanyahu has 6 fingers. One of them, he's at a, like this is the one where he's at the coffee shop, right? Somebody pointed away from his house. Somebody else pointed out that like on the cash register where he's buying the coffee, like it says 2024. So they're like little artifacts in the videos that make it look like he's not. It's not actually him, and it's AI. Here's the first one that went viral last week. Let me see if I can find the right moment. But where he holds up his hand, and his hand clearly has 6 fingers for a moment of the video. And so again, he then comes out with Mike Huckabee and trolls everybody. This is from today. So and I said this morning on Badlands Daily. I said, I don't think this is real. I don't think Netanyahu's dead. I think that if anything, maybe Mossad put this stuff out to discredit people, to make so people would run with it and insist that Netanyahu's dead, and insist that like, you know, because Yair Netanyahu stopped posting on his social media account. He's like a social media influencer. That's like his career. He posts like 50 times a day, and he hasn't posted in a week. You know, so there are all these little pieces of evidence that people are pointing to, saying, "Well, this must mean Netanyahu's dead, right?" Now you have earlier today this article from Times of Israel: Netanyahu and Huckabee mock conspiracy theories about Prime Minister's death. Yes, Mike, I'm alive. And this is coming from the Netanyahu official X account. It's normally easier to play this through X. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. StreamYard's doing the thing where it cuts off the audio, so we got to reshare it. So Huckabee is like mocking everybody who thought Netanyahu was alive and saying that Trump sent him over there to check on him.
I know. And
Mr. Prime Minister, I wanted you to know the president asked me to come and make sure you were okay.
yes, Mike. Yes, I'm alive.
I checked that, and I'm happy to see that. But he wanted to make sure because, you guys get along too well.
I know, and we shake hands with 5 fingers in each hand. But I have to tell you,
there's him referencing he has 5 fingers.
Oh.
And he pulls out a card.
Yeah, I don't read it. So it's a punch card.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I erased 2 names on the punch cards, and you see how many more on this batch.
You know what the good news is? My name is not on the punch card.
Your name is on the list of the good guys.
Thank you.
And what the president, the U.S. forces are doing is incredible. We're very proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. And getting rid of these lunatics who would like to develop nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them to every American city after wiping out Israel. They ain't going to do that. We're wiping them out.
I love it. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. So yeah, I mean the point is that all of this stuff is
Mr. Prime Minister, I wanted you to know
thick,
the president
thick
asked me to
fog
come
of
and make
war.
sure you were okay.
Thick fog of war. And we shouldn't. Sorry, I'll stop playing. And the point is, we shouldn't take anything at face value. Everything is a psyop. Everything is disinformation. Everything is designed to confuse you, distract you, and make you believe things that aren't real. The Larijani thing, where he comes out and he gives a press conference, we got to make sure that that's real, right? We got to make sure that that isn't also a psyop. So, again, all this just feels like theater. The question is, who is the intended recipient? Who's the intended target? In my opinion, I think what is happening is that Trump is running an op against all the bad actors in America who are insistent on taking us into war after war after war after war. When we come back, we'll talk about the ops that are being run against the Americans. We'll also talk about what's happening in Central America. But for now, let's get a word from.
Legend says, on St. Patrick's Day, a beard without oil is just a chin with ambition. But a beard with soft disclosure beard oil, that's true treasure. Spiced vanilla, naked, smooth as a leprechaun's getaway plan. Soft enough to impress your barber, bold enough to confuse a baby goat. And this boar bristle brush tames your beard like it holds the crown coin. Every bottle is American made, which means when you buy Soft Disclosure, you're supporting 6 American small businesses. That's not luck, that's capitalism with cheekbones. And while you're at it, try our mint green deodorant, because even legends need fresh pits. Soft Disclosure, go for gold. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code TINYBRIGHT for 15% off.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. Promo code does not apply to bundle discounts.
What up, Badlanders? Are you ready to rock something new in 2026? Well, as always, we got you covered with The Rise Badlands Native Collection. Built from the rich tones and rugged terrain of the Dakotas, equal parts beautiful and brutal. Old roots, new vibe. Whether you got gators in your backyard or you have to take a bush plane to the post office, Badlanders are worldwide. Different dirt, same tribe. By the way, your friends at Rise have a deal for you. Show up at GART rocking your native gear. Swing by our booth and get in to win a free Badlands Rise hoodie of your choice. And don't forget, every order throws fuel on the fire of the Made in USA parallel economy. So grab something now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
It's officially a new era for gold and silver. Gold has broken $5,000 an ounce and silver has surged past $100. In 2025 alone, gold jumped 64%, while silver skyrocketed 150%. And with political and economic uncertainty ahead, 2026 could bring even bigger moves. After such a historic run, a pullback is normal. Metals move fast, so some consolidation is expected, but top analysts are calling for even higher prices. We've seen the first bank failure of 2026, with regulators shutting down Metropolitan Capital Bank and Trust in Chicago. Could more follow? It's no surprise Americans are pulling money from banks and turning to the proven protection of gold and silver. Big news, Goldco is celebrating America's 250th anniversary with a limited time bonus. Get up to 10% free gold or silver, plus free storage and a free home safe with a qualifying cash purchase. This offer won't last, so act now. Are we seeing the early signs of another 2008 style crash? Don't wait for the next shoe to drop. Protect your wealth with precious metals, because in uncertain times, gold and silver shine brightest. Visit Badlands Media or badlandsgold.com today for your free 2026 gold and silver kit and bonus buy. That's badlandsgold.com.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, MyPillow mattresses and MyPillow mattress toppers as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets. Regular $69.98. Now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale only $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
Use the first hour. That was just anyway. So we'll move on. So we do have some information about Larijani. No confirmation that he's alive, but yesterday he held a press conference where he basically called on all of the Muslim countries of the Middle East to unite with Iran against Israel. I mean, he said the great Satan and the little Satan. So Israel and the United States. Um, let's see. And this is the article right here. So he says, choose your side. Iran's Larijani calls on Muslim world to confront the great Satan. He says, Ali Larijani, head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, issued a 6-point statement on March 16th addressed to Muslims and Islamic governments across the world, accusing regional states of failing to support Iran during the U.S.-Israeli war and urging them to reconsider their political alignment. Quote, Iran has been subjected to a deceptive U.S. Zionist aggression that occurred during negotiations with the aim of dismantling Iran. This aggression led to the martyrdom of the great and self-sacrificing leader of the Islamic Revolution, as well as a number of civilians and military commanders, Larijani said. He said the aggression was met with firm national and Islamic resistance from the Iranian people, who were able to suppress the attacking enemy until it has now become unable to find a way out of its strategic impasse. Larijani criticized the broader Islamic world for failing to back Tehran, saying that except for rare cases and only within the limits of political positions, no Islamic state has stood by the Iranian people. Addressing governments that condemned Iranian strikes on U.S. facilities in the region, Larijani dismissed their objections as a flimsy pretext, asking whether Iran was expected to stand idly as U.S. bases through Gulf countries are used to stage strikes on Iranian soil. He described the ongoing war as a conflict, quote, between the U.S. and Israel on one side and Iran, the Muslim nation, and the forces of resistance on the other. So which side will you stand with? Larijani also criticized the stance of some Islamic governments, saying that Iran remains, quote, on the path of resistance in confronting the greater Satan and the lesser Satan, meaning the U.S. and Israel. He also questioned whether their positions contradict the prophet, saying, quote, whoever hears a man calling, "O Muslims," and does not respond to him is not a Muslim. Larijani concluded by urging regional leaders to reconsider their strategic choices, warning that the U.S. has no loyalty to you and that Israel is your enemy, adding that Iran is sincere in advising you and does not seek to dominate you. He ended by saying that the unity of the Islamic Ummah, which means community, is achieved if achieved with full strength, is capable of guaranteeing security, progress, and independence for all its countries. So that is currently where things stand. And again, we'll find out if this guy is still alive or not. But again, just a lot of goofiness. So before we get out of the Middle East, let's look at a few other things. We have the border peace. Hamas, through all this chaos, I think over the weekend, it sounds like Hamas met with the border peace for the first time. It says the U.S. president's plan for post-war Gaza faces pressure amid the Iran war and continued Israeli strikes on the Palestinian enclave. Hamas has held its first talks with the newly established U.S.-led border peace as the post-war Gaza reconstruction plans come under strain from the Iran war and continued Israeli strikes on the enclave. Reuters has reported the border peace, an international body formally established in mid-January as part of U.S. President Donald Trump's Gaza peace roadmap, includes business figures and officials from multiple countries. Critics have questioned its mandate in the absence of Palestinian political representation. The board's activities have largely been put on hold in recent weeks as Muslim member states voiced anger over the U.S.-Israeli bombardment of Iran and debated whether to remain involved. According to Reuters, citing its sources on Monday, the meeting took place late last week at an undisclosed location in the region and focused on salvaging elements of Trump's initiative, including a long-term ceasefire and a reconstruction program overseen by the board. The talks were described as preliminary with no concrete breakthrough announced. Hamas officials reportedly used the encounter to demand the reopening of Gaza's Rafah crossing with Egypt, which Israel shut following its airstrikes on Iran. The militant group reportedly warned that if Rafah remains closed and humanitarian access is not restored, it could walk away from the ceasefire agreements. Despite the formal truce that ended Israel's 2-year war in Gaza last October, the IDF has continued to carry out strikes. At least 12 people, including children, were reportedly killed in attacks on Sunday, adding to a post-ceasefire death toll of more than 600. The overall figures exceed 72,000, according to the enclave's health officials. And then it just goes on to give background of the Gaza conflict. That is interesting because it does sound like they had this meeting, and then Israel opened up the Rafah crossing. Those are the reports that I'm understanding. And so again, we'll see what happens with this. Like we're kind of early, and we're early in understanding that, in understanding exactly what's going on with Hamas and the border peace. But again, Iran is kind of taking all of the oxygen out of the room when it comes to the Middle East. And so now we can shift to this story. So this is from Barak Ravid, again from Friday. And I think we may have covered this at least in concept on Friday. I don't think I showed the map or talked about the plans in detail. We may have just mentioned it at the end of the show. But Israel is now preparing for a major ground invasion of southern Lebanon, aiming to seize all territory south of the Litani River and dismantle the Hezbollah infrastructure. U.S. and Israeli officials told Axios troops and reserves are being reinforced on the border ahead of the operation, which could become Israel's largest invasion of Lebanon since 2006. And so here's the map that shows the land they intend to annex. That's what the plan is to take everything south of the Litani River. And I think this, as I said on this morning on Badlands Daily, I think this coincides with the recommendation from the Pardons Department last week, where they said we're not going to recommend a pardon for Netanyahu because, again, as I said last week, all the pressures on Netanyahu now to expand the borders of Israel. And the reports are that they're gonna call up 450,000 reserves from the Israeli population. These are people who served in the IDF, did their tour, and then rotated out. And then they're required by law to be signed up on the reserve status in case of a war up until a certain age. I don't know what that age is at this point, but that is what is being reported. And again, is it true? We'll find out. But if that is the case, then that's going to be a devastating development for Israel in terms of like economically losing the manpower. It's going to drive more people to leave Israel voluntarily, to move out of Israel. Most of them have dual citizenship, so they're going to move back to wherever they came from, primarily America, Russia, wherever. Here's the latest from Barak Ravid. That report was coming from Barak Ravid. And this is based, I think this is based on the meeting that Trump had today with the Irish Prime Minister. The title, which I guess he's changed because initially it said something different, but it says Trump struggles to build coalition to reopen Strait of Hormuz. U.S. allies are resisting the Trump administration's pressure to join an international coalition to reopen the critical Strait of Hormuz, while the U.K. has circulated the plan among potential coalition members. Responses from several other countries have ranged from skepticism to hell no, according to sources familiar with the diplomatic talks. The strait closure has become the main crisis in the war for the White House. As long as the Iranian blockade holds and Gulf oil remains trapped, Trump can't end the war and declare victory even if he wants to. The White House is trying both military and diplomatic means to unlock the crisis. The U.S. military is conducting strikes on Iranian anti-ship positions along the shores of the Strait of Hormuz to decimate Iran's ability to attack oil tankers. Meanwhile, the White House and State Department are trying to build a coalition of countries to provide ships, other military assets, and political backing for a mission to escort ships or otherwise provide a secure route for shipping in and out of the Gulf. A source with knowledge said the Trump administration wants the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Australia, Canada, and Gulf countries and Jordan to be part of the coalition. Does Jordan have a navy? It'd be surprising if they did, but maybe they do. The U.S. has also approached Japan and South Korea, but the leaders of countries, including Germany, Italy, and Japan, have already ruled out sending naval vessels. Trump spoke on Sunday with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron about joining the coalition. Trump said Macron was 8 out of 10 in terms of willingness to help. He also said UK would join. But a source with knowledge said that while Starmer was forward-leaning, Macron was non-committal. Macron gave a final no, but at the moment, Macron didn't give a final no, but at the moment it is a no. A second source said. The UK has drafted a plan for how a multinational task force could be constructed and shared it with the US and several other countries, the two sources said, but the UK draft hasn't been shared with all the countries Trump has asked to join, and any consensus about how the coalition would work appears a ways off. Quote, it's a mess. A lot of people are confused, a European diplomat said. European Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said after a meeting with foreign ministers of the 27 member states that there is no appetite in the EU to join Trump's Hormuz coalition. This is not Europe's war, she said. Trump told reporters on Monday that he was greatly disappointed in some countries that were skeptical of partnering with the U.S. to open the strait. Quote, leaders in some countries that we've helped for many, many years, we protected them from horrible outside sources, and they weren't that enthusiastic, Trump said, including countries that host large numbers of U.S. troops. Trump has argued that countries in Asia and Europe that are dependent on Gulf oil should be rushing in to help, and told the Financial Times it would be very bad for NATO's future if allies don't step up. Trump has fueled tensions with many of the same allies he's now calling upon over a year of tariffs, insults, and threats. Many U.S. allies are also skeptical of Trump's case for war with Iran, but they will face steep consequences if oil and other goods like semiconductors can't traverse the straits. And I think that's the pinch point right there, is that, as Trump has pointed out, we, the United States, don't need the Strait of Hormuz, right? It's, it'll impact the global price of oil, but as Trump has said, we sell oil, so that'll only benefit us. But again, let's wait and see what happens as far as the price of the pump and how oil price is affected here at home. And then from there, I think we can pivot. We'll end in the Caribbean, in South America, but I want to spend a few minutes talking about this op that's being run on that's being run on the American people. Let's see. Okay. So we see that there are a lot of calls online to criminalize. I mean, that's where we're heading towards. We're heading towards the criminalization of criticism of Iran, of Israel. Like, that's where everything is heading. This is something that we've been tracking. I've been tracking for years now. I saw it coming. It's not surprising that we're here now. It's not surprising that we're seeing Laura Loomer and other Israeli influencers, she's definitely Israeli, talking about this stuff. Here is the Badlands news brief from Monday. And, there's a number of signs over the years that I can point to. This is from back in 2023. This is back when Randy Fine was not a U.S. congressman. He was a state senator for Florida, and he proposed HB 269, which quote, new offenses related to harassment, threats, or intimidation targeting religious or ethnic groups. That was the language of the bill. The bill was presented as targeting graffiti and other forms of harassment and vandalism, but a key provision included criminalizing flyers and pamphlets that criticize Israel under the IRHA definition of anti-Semitism, which equates it with anti-Zionism, meaning if you criticize Israel, that's anti-Semitic. It also says that if you say that, you quote scripture that says that Jesus was killed by the Jews, that also is anti-Semitic. And basically the like under current, or I guess previous Florida law prior to this bill being signed into law, littering was not illegal, right? So if you littered, you might get a fine, but it wasn't a criminal offense. This took that and made it illegal, because the argument they make is that if you pass out flyers and pamphlets, you're littering, and that's a form of harassment because you're potentially littering somebody's property with flyers that are anti-Semitic. Like it's very, very loose logic here that they're using. Very loose logic. But again, in my opinion, this is all about establishing a beachhead, right, on really flimsy flimsy case law and premise, and then in the future expanding that case law and premise once they have like a proof of concept and they can demonstrate, oh yeah, this is necessary because look at all these Jew haters that are out there saying mean things about Israel and inciting people to pick up arms or do something violent against Jews. So here is Randy Fine in 2023 explaining this bill to the citizens of Florida.
Holding people accountable without violating their free speech.
Sure. And again, I would remind you that there's no First Amendment right to conduct. There's a First Amendment right to speech. And the things that we're targeting in the bill are not speech. Again, if someone wants to stand across the street from my house and wave the sign on the sidewalk, they have every right to do that. And this bill won't have anything to do with that. But when it veers into conduct, and so the way we're going to approach this is through a hate crime kicker. So if you graffiti a building, it is a crime now. But if your motivation is hate, it will be a third-degree felony. You will spend 5 years in prison. If you want to litter, it's a crime right now. But if you litter and if your motivation is a hate crime, it will be a third-degree felony. You will spend 5 years in jail. It is a crime right now to hang banners from an interstate. For obvious reasons, we don't want to distract drivers. But if you do that and you have a hate crime, a hate motivation, it will be a third-degree felony. You will spend 5 years in jail.
How optimistic are you of moving this bill along?
I guarantee the bill will pass. And I never do that.
Yeah, I wonder how he can make that guarantee. So again, like you heard him say it, he said littering is not a crime right now, but we're going to make it a third degree felony. You will go to prison for 5 years, right? And again, if you could picture somebody passing out, like the way they're going to present it is they're going to present it in like the worst possible context, the worst possible case, somebody going to a Jewish person's house and throwing flyers all over their yard that say like, get out Jew, like something like that, right? Something that's obvious under current law, like you don't need to pass a new law for that to be considered a hate crime. Like you go to somebody's house, you throw stuff all over their yard, you're vandalizing their property effectively, you're harassing them, you're targeting them. That's already a hate crime. What they're saying now is that if you're out somewhere in public and you're passing out flyers that are critical of Israel, right, that aren't necessarily saying it's all, it's the Jews, but saying, hey, Israel is doing XYZ, we disagree with it, here's why. And the people, it's on a college campus, let's just say, and the people are being handed the flyers and they're just, all right, whatever. And maybe they're walking past a trash can and kind of like recklessly throwing it in the trash can, but it's falling out of the trash can and there's trash all around the trash can. That's now littering, right? And the littering pamphlets are, anti-Israel. And oh, by the way, the IRHA or IHRA definition of anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism, right? Being anti-Israel. You've now committed a third-degree felony. That is, again, it's a huge leap of logic. But he just made the case. He also said if you hang a banner up over like the interstate, which you've seen tons of people do for many, many different reasons, and your motivation is hate, that's now a third-degree felony. So you hang a banner up that says Free Palestine. That's now a third-degree felony in Florida. And he was right. It did pass. Here is his post on April 27, 2023, acknowledging that it passed. And he said, this is the post from Randy Fine, made a secret trip to Israel, and then exclamation points made a secret trip to Jerusalem with exclamation points behind that, with Representative Mike Caruso to deliver Governor Ron DeSantis's HB 269, the strongest anti-Semitism bill in the United States, to Florida's Nazi thugs. I have news. Attack Jews on their property and you're going to prison. Never again means never again. And there's a picture of Ron DeSantis signing this thing into law in Israel. They're like, why would a governor go to the state of Israel to sign something into law, a state level law? Like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This is like almost flagrantly, flippantly trying to antagonize and provoke the people who are not fans of Israel, right? And by the way, like his language here is very deceptive because he says, I have news, attack Jews on their property and you're going to prison. Excuse me, sir. But the implication here is that before this piece of paper was signed, it was somehow legal to physically attack Jews on their property. I mean, I'm pretty sure if I go and I attack anybody, regardless of what their identity is, whether it's on their property or public property or whatever, That's a crime. To physically attack somebody is a crime, right? Unprovoked, like no self-defense, that's a crime. So he's being very deceptive in how he's presenting this bill. This bill is not about physical violence against Jews. You don't need a bill for that. That's already an existing law. This is about, again, expanding. This is like mission creep. Like we're creeping towards the First Amendment being outlawed. Here is same guy, Randy Fine, who, by the way, back in 2024 was elected as a congressman. So he's now has left the Florida State Senate, and he's now in the U.S. Congress as a U.S. congressman from Florida. Here is him speaking at the Republican Jewish Coalition Summit in November 2025. So what, 5 months ago? Listen to what he says.
But I'm here for the kids down here because it's easy to talk about anti-Semitism on the left. I want to talk about the dark force rising on our side. Multiple speakers have talked about the rise of anti-Semitism on the right. But it is not enough to speak in platitudes or generalities about the fight. We must call evil by its name. 5 years ago, if I was talking to my father, who's watching, hi Dad, if I was talking to my father at 8:59 p.m. at night, he would say, Randy, I gotta go. Tucker Carlson's gonna be on. But make no mistake, today, Tucker Carlson is the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. He has chosen to take on the mantle of leader of a modern-day Hitler Youth, to broadcast and feature those who celebrate the Nazis, those who call for the extermination of Israel, to defend Hamas, to even criticize President Trump for stopping Iran's nuclear ambitions. Friends, make no mistake, Tucker is not MAGA. Tucker's fall from grace has been one of the most extraordinary implosions in political history. And the rapidity of it has created real challenges for us all. Because our friends don't have our shared experience. I even deal with this with my colleagues in the House. See, they remember the Tucker of 5 years ago. They don't live with anti-Semitism every day. They don't think about it the way that we do. And it's jarring for them to try to understand, how did this person become who he is today? But the challenge is he's inspired a movement of hate in our midst. And I'm not done calling people out.
Okay, so the target now is Tucker Carlson, and they are openly calling for him to be put in prison. Here is, again, we'll fast forward to March 5th. This was a few days after Tucker put out the video that he put out, the podcast he put out about the Chabad Lubavitch, which is that if you recall the ultra Orthodox Jewish group that in Brooklyn that was raided by the NYPD 2 years ago, and they found secret tunnels underneath the building, and there were they pulled like a high chair and I think a stroller and a bloody mattress with blood stains on it out of these tunnels. And there was lots of controversy, lots of speculation online about what it all meant. That's the organization that Tucker was covering. And Tucker's allegation in his podcast was that the Chabad Lubavitch had paid for patches that are put on all the IDF soldiers' uniforms that show the Third Temple, and that their plan is to rebuild the Third Temple. I think we may have even talked about that with Ash on one of the shows that her and I did together. So here's Randy Fine calling out Tucker from Congress for doing that podcast.
It is easy to criticize anti-Semitism when it happens on the other side. It is more difficult to address it when it happens on your own. It was not enough for Tucker Carlson to a few days ago say every Jew should have to do a DNA test to prove that they were Jewish. It was not enough for him to say that a terrorist should be able to kill us if they are under 18 years old. But yesterday, Tucker Carlson attacked perhaps the best, the most good group of Jews that are out there, a group of people who see their job to evangelize not other Jews, but Jews themselves, Chabad, a group that no one ever has anything bad to say about because they care about everyone. I wear a kippah from UF Chabad today in honor of them. We have a cancer in this country. It is anti-Semitism, and Tucker Carlson represents it. He is many things, but one thing President Trump and I agree on is he is certainly not MAGA. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, so then fast forward to a few days later, because this would have been, I think, before this school shooting happened. The school shooting, I think, happened just a few days after he delivered that. That was on March 5th. So then the school shooting happens. Tucker comes out. We don't need to play the video, but Tucker comes out and claims the CIA is reading his text messages and accusing him of being like an Iranian agent, like working for Iran, whatever. I think the White House has already come out and told Mark Caputo that that's bullshit, that there's no investigation into Tucker about that. But here's Laura Loomer. So this is right after the shooting happened at that Jewish school in Michigan. Laura Loomer says Tucker Carlson should be held accountable criminally for every shooting that happens at a kibbutz or a synagogue. He needs to be forced to own the consequences of his words. Every Jew hater needs to feel the weight of their words. Muslim jihadists are listening to Tucker. They are taking in what he says, and they are taking action. As I exposed, the Austin, Texas Islamic terrorist who murdered 3 people 2 weeks ago followed and watched Tucker Carlson. I cannot stress enough how big of a national security threat Tucker Carlson is. He is radicalizing Muslims, and those Muslims want to kill Jews. Tucker has so much blood on his hands. I believe he deserves the blame for what happened at the Jewish day school in Michigan. He is sick. Everyone knows it too. And then she posted after that, I can't wait to see Tucker go to prison. And then a bunch of other Israeli influencers that got 1.3 million views, by the way. This woman, Fleur Hassan Nahum, she is based in Israel. She is literally an Israeli political pundit. I don't really know who she is, but she said Tucker Carlson should be arrested and tried for treason, referring to the allegation that he was working for Iran. 3.3 million views. So I guess Tucker has gone, by the way, from working for Qatar to working for Iran. He's a very busy man, apparently. It's so thinly veiled, you can see right through it. This is exactly, by the way, what the left was doing to Trump before, where they were saying if somebody does a school shooting or they do some sort of act of whatever, violence or terrorism, and they were a Trump supporter, they owned a MAGA hat, they said nice things about Trump to their parents one time. Then Donald Trump is then guilty by association of inspiring that person to commit that act of violence because that person saw something in Trump that they liked and they turned around and then they did whatever the act was. Ash and I on her show last night went through the standard that was established by the Supreme Court for incitement of violence, which is what they're referring to here. That's what this is. And it was based on a 1969 case where a Ku Klux Klan leader in Ohio said that there might be a need for revengeance if the U.S. government continues to oppress white people. That's basically what he said. He was arrested, fined $1,000, and sentenced to 10 years in prison. He appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided that what he did was protected speech, and here's why. That Brandenburg was the guy's name who was prosecuted, and that led to the establishment of what's called the Brandenburg test. The Brandenburg test says that, let me pull up the exact language so we can look at it together. So this is what qualifies for incitement today. It's important for everyone to know this, right, as we move forward, because they are trying to say that that Tucker Carlson has engaged in incitement and therefore should be prosecuted. And when Laura Loomer and a bunch of Israeli influencers are saying it, considering Laura Loomer, her proximity to Trump, I mean, she said she's already given a criminal referral to the DOJ for them to go investigate Tucker Carlson. Under modern case law, protected speech includes general advocacy for violence. We should revolt someday. That's protected. Political extremism. That's protected. Even if you're anti-Semitic or racist or whatever, as long as it's just political activism, that's protected. It can be awful. It can be ugly. It can be nasty. But remember, You're either pro free speech or you're anti free speech. And free speech means even the ugly stuff gets protected. Excuse me. Abstract encouragement of illegal acts. So encouraging people to do something like don't pay your taxes, right? Like, but not giving them specific instructions on how to do that, right? That is protected speech. And now I don't know if encouraging people not to pay their taxes, I'm pretty sure that that's protected free speech, but you know, I'm not a lawyer, but that's what it says here. Abstract encouragement of illegal acts. You're not specifically instructing them how to do something or telling them to do it. You're just generally saying in a general sense, protected. And then speech about violence in the indefinite future. One day we should go do this thing. One day we should go take control of our government by force, whatever. Protected. Here are the things that are unprotected. This is the Brandenburg test. All three of these things have to be met in order for it to be considered incitement of violence. Number one, intent to cause unlawful action, meaning like a call to do something unlawful, right? Specific. Imminence, so that's number two, meaning it's right now, not in the future, not like years from now, but right now, or very soon. And then three, likelihood that it will actually happen, right? So like if you're in like the example I gave last night, if you're in Hawaii and you're like online and you're like, tomorrow morning we're going to take control of DC by force. Well, that's not very likely because you're in Hawaii. Like you're not going to be in DC in a few hours. Okay, so I need to grab some water, but while I do, I will play this clip. I think what's happening here is while you have people calling for Tucker Carlson, and look, some people think Tucker is an earnest actor, maybe on a redemption arc. Some people think that Tucker is a intelligence asset, you know, doing the work of the CIA. Regardless of where you fall on Tucker, he is obviously falling into a Hegelian dialectic and being used as an opportunity to go after the First Amendment. So if they do put Tucker in prison, that will then set a precedent that they will then weaponize against the rest of us. And what I think this is all about is really criminalizing the criticism of government, which is already a thing in places like Israel. Israel, if it can be considered a national security threat if you say things about the government that are damaging to the reputation or put anybody in the government in danger because you're like, you know, reporting on the IDF operating in a certain part of Palestine or whatever, right? They're very like they will sanction news organizations. They will arrest arrest reporters. They do it all the time. There is no free speech in Israel. That's very important. And the collective, the community, is more important than the individual. That is it's an inversion of the American way. So I think what they're going to do is once they establish that it is illegal, you know, based on anti-Semitism to criticize the Israeli government, then they'll say, we now have to apply this standard to Jewish politicians in America. If you criticize a Jewish politician in America, that might incite somebody to go attack that politician with violence. That's now hate speech. Now you can be arrested for that too. And then ultimately what they'll do is they'll say that any politician in America, now we need to apply the standard to anyone, criticizing the government might inspire somebody to go commit an act of violence against that politician or that government agency or whatever. That is the slippery slope that we're going to slide down if this is left unchecked. And so what I think Jonathan Greenblatt is doing right here, I'm going to play a few videos of Jonathan Greenblatt. What I think Greenblatt is doing, this is the head of the ADL, is I think he is trying to provoke anti-Semitism. I think he is doing things that are so cartoonishly evil, right? And saying things that are obviously going to upset people and maybe even scare them, that then you're going to get emotional responses online, right, to the things that he's doing. And then those emotional responses will be captured, collected, screenshot. And then once acts of violence are committed, these screenshots will be used. Well, look what people were saying online leading up to this event, right? So let's play this video and then we will discuss.
Now, finally, we believe that we can't just throw our hands up and see anti-Semitism as inevitable. If we want to stop it, we've got to change hearts and minds. And that's our third pillar. From protect and advocate to educate. To my mind, to be smart about education, you need to follow the data. That means evidence-based interventions that research demonstrates reduce conspiratorial thinking, diminish zero-sum moral reasoning, and strengthen the willingness of bystanders to act. Driving our efforts in this area is the ADL Center for Anti-Semitism Research, or CAR. We have a team of PhDs at ADL. They are on staff and continuously running experiments, conducting tests to assess what works and what doesn't in reducing anti-Semitic attitudes. CAR is working with their colleagues in the ADL Center for Technology and Society to understand how the major AI platforms are building their products so that we can help them prevent new technology from replicating the worst features of social media. We don't want LLMs to emerge as an even more potent super spreader of anti-Semitism and hate.
So yeah, using algorithms, developing AI to detect anti-Semitic thought, anti-Semitic posts, whatever they consider that to be, and then reporting that to the proper authorities, which he goes on to say that they absolutely do. So here he is in the same speech attacking, using Tucker Carlson again. He's using Tucker Carlson as the standard.
Podcaster Tucker Carlson, again, one of the most visible, venomous anti-Semites in public life, he bizarrely accused Chabad of orchestrating a holy war in the Middle East. I mean, really. And legions of right-wing influencers followed his lead. And if you think demonizing Jews doesn't have consequences, you should go to West Bloomfield. Or go to Silicon Valley and talk to the two men in San Jose who were violently assaulted as they sat in an outdoor cafe speaking Hebrew to each other. Or go to Toronto, where 3 synagogues were shot at. Or go to Belgium, or Norway, or Holland, where bombs were hurled at synagogues and Jewish schools. Or go to the UK and talk to the Jewish high school soccer team who endured spectators chanting at them, "Dirty Jews," and go back to the gas chambers. And this wasn't in the last 2 decades, or even in the last 2 years. This was just in the last 2 weeks or so. And I'm not even mentioning the dozens and dozens and dozens of calls that ADL regional offices get day in and day out from coast to coast from people experiencing harassment and vandalism and violence. Folks, make no mistake, we are facing the most concentrated, the most dangerous, and a lethal surge of anti-Semitism, the worst in living memory. And it's not just coming from the right or coming from the left, from Islamist extremists or Christian nationalists or white supremacists or radical anti-Zionists. To paraphrase a recent film, it is everything, everywhere, all at once.
Okay. And so now I want to pivot to this video. This is where they start to assign blame for the shooting that happened last week. And listen carefully to what he says, because he's saying that anyone who contributes to the attack in terms of like the rhetoric that leads people to do these attacks should be held accountable.
Thanks so much for joining us. I understand you have some friends and colleagues who actually belong to Temple Israel. What are you hearing from members of the Jewish community about this latest act of violence targeting these American Jews?
Well, yeah, as Whitney kind of said just now, I mean, this is the largest Reform temple in North America. It's a huge place. I've been there. I've spoken there. My local staff belong to the synagogue. Our local board chair belongs to Temple Israel. It's a very special place. So number one, everyone is grateful for the security personnel, law enforcement, the first responders. Wolf, I want you just to imagine that building had 140 preschool children inside when the car rammed through the doors and drove through the hallway. If not for the bravery of the security personnel, 140 children would have been blown up by the explosives packed in that car, if not shot to death. So they averted a major, major tragedy. But what I must say is the real tragedy here is that this synagogue has to have security personnel, bulletproof glass, alarm systems, and it's still not enough. The Jewish community spent $750 million last year on security, and yet somehow our synagogues, our schools aren't hardened enough. This is no longer a problem. This is a crisis, and it has got to be dealt with.
And as you know, Jonathan, there have been recent shootings all over the country involving synagogues, including 3 synagogues in the Toronto, Canada area. Toronto, not very far away from Detroit. We're also learning that 4 suspects have been arrested following an overnight arson attack at a synagogue in the Netherlands. You say this attack in the Detroit area did not happen in isolation. Explain a little bit more what you mean.
Yeah, it didn't happen in isolation. We have an epidemic. So think about it. The synagogues were shot up in Toronto, like you said. In Jackson, Mississippi, a synagogue was burned to the ground. We've had Jewish people assaulted in broad daylight just yesterday in San Jose, California, because they were speaking Hebrew. And of course, now we have this attack. And again, it's happening around the world. We had a bomb thrown at a synagogue in Belgium last week. Again, you just mentioned the attack in the Netherlands. So look, we are seeing Jewish people, the Jewish state, blamed for the war in the Middle East. That is wrong. It is wrong to scapegoat. It is wrong to hold Jewish people accountable for something you don't like on the other side of the planet. And we really need leaders on all sides, in politics, running for office, podcasters, to stop with the conspiracies, to stop with the accusations, and then tell us, but we oppose anti-Semitism. You don't get to say you're opposed to hate if you're trafficking in hateful conspiracy theories. Everyone needs to dial down the rhetoric, to take a step back, and to start doing something to stop this epidemic before it gets even worse.
And it's continuing all over the country right now, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, at ADL, we focus on protecting the Jewish community. We have never been busier. Like, our whole Center on Extremism is detecting threats, Wolf, 24/7. And we are seeing a huge intensification, particularly in the last 2 weeks since the war started. And it's wrong. Again, what I worry about is synagogues can afford security directors, but a kosher supermarket can't. And nor can every household, Jewish household in America. So we are not targets for people's kind of crazy politics. We are Americans like everybody else, and we need leaders to lead and to acknowledge the issue and help us to solve it once and for all.
Okay, so,
Thanks so much.
he's basically saying that people should be held accountable when they contribute to the kind of violence we saw at these schools last week. And so my response to this is, if that's the case, if you really feel that way, that anyone who contributes to that situation should be held accountable, right, to inspiring somebody to go do that. What about this, Mr. Greenblatt? What about when you stand up? I mean, we just saw a video of him saying that they're going to develop an AI to detect anti-Semitic thought online and then report it. What about this? This is from a year ago. This is him speaking at the Knesset.
We've got to start doing things differently. And the same goes here in Israel. This means that the problem won't be solved by yet another new Knesset task force. It won't be solved by the government just throwing money at the problem. It won't be solved by the IDF spokesperson's unit issuing updated talking points or suddenly using TikTok. Like us in America, you need to adopt new strategies, to experiment with creative tactics, to study the results and scale what works. Maybe it's a whole new IDF unit, call it 8300, to lead this fight. But we need the kind of genius that manufactured Apollo gold pagers and infiltrated Hezbollah for over a decade to prepare for this battle. We need the kind of courage that executed Operation Deep Layer inside Syria and destroyed Iranian missile manufacturing capabilities to undertake this mission. This is the kind of ingenuity and inventiveness that have always been a hallmark of the state of Israel, that have always been a characteristic of the Jewish people. I know we can do it.
Okay, so just to be clear, the optics of what this is a purportedly American citizen. He's obviously Israeli. He's made that very clear. He won't admit that, but he's obviously has Israeli citizenship. In a foreign country, advocating that foreign country's military, because he says create a new IDF unit called an 8300, that means military intelligence unit, to target Americans online and others, but Americans online who are expressing their exercising their free speech rights. And he said, and the examples he uses for what kind of operation should be run against these Americans are the exploding pager operation, and then also a military operation that was run against Syria. He's using like kinetic violence, acts of kinetic violence as examples of this is the kind of thinking that we need. What do you think the response to that's going to be online, Mr. Greenblatt, when people see this video of you basically calling for the geniuses who came up with the pager attack to now direct their efforts against people online who criticize Israel? Do you think that's going to make them less critical of Israel, less critical of as you perceive it, Jewish people? And then, the other one that is right beneath this is him talking about how the Israeli government needs to take over social media platforms like TikTok so they can control them. Listen,
you must take this deadly seriously. Pushing extremists off Wikipedia might not seem equal to the challenge of pushing Hezbollah north of the Litani River. Capturing TikTok might seem less meaningful than holding on to Mount Hermon. Libelous tweets certainly might seem less deadly than missiles from Yemen. But this is urgent because the next war will be decided based on how Israel and its allies perform online as much as offline. We must.
So don't you find it odd that so there's been there's a lot of emotion here, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear, frankly. There's a lot of fear about what is happening. People don't like the what they've been witnessing online in Gaza, whether or not those videos are real. People are seeing them, they think they're real. They think that Israel is committing atrocities. It clearly is in Gaza. And they're upset about that. They're upset that they're seeing war propaganda, basically, but acts of warfare where children are being buried under rubble and people are being killed in mass. And they're upset about that. And they're upset at the Israeli government for it. And instead of engaging with those people and trying to talk to them, person to person, and they're trying to help understand points of view, the response is we should silence these people. We should take over social media platforms and shut them down, cut out their tongue, take away their voice, target them for prosecution, and maybe even target them with violence when he refers to like the exploding pager operation. Do you think that's going to bring the temperature in the room down, or do you think it's going to bring the temperature in the room up and make things way worse, escalate the situation? I think that actually might be what this guy's goal is. This guy's goal is to basically get people like like Groypers, Nick Fuentes, all of them more angry so that they then get more riled up and then they start posting more hateful content and more angry content online. That's what I think the goal is here. Using Tucker Carlson as like the straw man, as the example is silly because Tucker Carlson does not meet the standards of the Brandenburg test, not even close. He's a big softy when it comes to like all that stuff. There are far more aggressive people online than Tucker Carlson. So to cite him as like the standard of like the worst anti-Semite in the country is insane because there are people who are way worse than Tucker Carlson when it comes to that stuff. But the reason they're going after Tucker is because of the size of his platform, the size of his reach, and the fact that he does appeal to normies. He does appeal to people who otherwise wouldn't engage with Nick Fuentes' content, or even, my content for that matter. That's why they're going after Tucker Carlson, because he has the largest reach and the largest platform. So yeah, this is the hill to die on, guys. This is the hill to die, and it's not even election integrity. It's the First Amendment. And when you play, I played the clip I think on Friday of Ted Cruz saying, Christ is King is offensive. It's anti-Semitic. Like, that's what they're doing. They're moving towards that position. And again, I think it's just a beachhead. I think it's a Trojan horse to ultimately get to outlawing criticism of the Israeli government, or I'm sorry, of just government in general, all politicians. But they're going to start with this because it has the most emotional blackmail leverage against people. They tried it years ago with like the racism stuff and like the misogyny stuff, and that didn't work. So now they're pivoting to kind of the old faithful anti-Semitism. Like, remember that one? Like, remember the Holocaust, guys? Like, don't want to see that happen again. Better stop criticizing Jews. Better stop criticizing Israel. Better sit down and shut up, pay your taxes, and don't question things when you see things happen that you don't like with your government. Very, very concerning. So it's too late for us to kind of go to the Caribbean where I wanted to end this, but I will show you this. So Gustavo Petro put out posted a video online responding to somebody. Well, I'm sorry. This is a video of him speaking in a cabinet meeting, I think. And he says that Colombia is currently being bombed by Ecuador at this moment. So Ecuador is bombing. This person posting it says Ecuador is bombing narco trafficking camps. It's in Spanish, so it's not worth watching the video because most of us don't speak Spanish. But here's Gustavo Petro responding to all this. And he says, the bombings on the Colombia-Ecuador border don't seem to be from the armed groups. They don't have planes, nor from Colombia's public forces. I didn't give that order. There are 27 charred bodies, and the explanation isn't credible. The bombs are on the ground near families, many of whom have peacefully decided to replace their cocoa leaf plant crops with legal crops, meaning they replace their cocaine plants with coffee plants, coffee plants or coconuts or chocolate. Here I show the products from the substitution already: coffee, chocolate, and cocoa. So he's here. So what he's saying is that there are bombings that are occurring on the border of Colombia and Ecuador. The U.S. military is currently engaged in a kinetic campaign in Ecuador against the drug cartels. And this guy, Gustavo Petro, has been going around convincing farmers to stop growing cocaine plants for the cartels and instead rip them all up by the roots and replace them with chocolate or coffee. And that, of course, is leading to bombings of these farms and these people. So this is escalation. Like, we'll see what happens, but this appears to be escalation, and we'll have to keep an eye on it. So, guys, hit the thumbs up. I got to get out of here to go pick up my kids. Let's see if we have any rants. All right, I think we're good on the rants. As far as boosts go, if you are listening to this on replay, you can go to badlandsmedia.tv/boost and submit basically a Rumble rant at any time. And the host gets to keep more of the money than we would from the Rumble rant. I think we're caught up on that as well. All right, so hit the thumbs up, and we will see y'all tomorrow on Breaking History with Matt Arrett.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.